Anyone who keeps a phone by their bed knows the specific, quiet dread of a nighttime ring. A call at 2:17 in the morning never brings good news. For Jake, that ring threatened his entire world. His life was anchored by one person, his 19-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan was his daily companion, his best friend, and his absolute pride. When a sudden crisis hits, the human brain begins to distort time. As Jake rushed toward the hospital, seconds stretched into hours. Every red light on the empty streets felt like a deliberate cruelty, delaying his arrival. He finally reached the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital hallway. No words were exchanged at first. A doctor walked out, met Jake's eyes. His heavy, defeated posture conveyed the fatal outcome before he even opened his mouth. A sudden loss of this magnitude does terrible secondary damage. It instantly destroys the survivor's baseline belief that the world is a safe, predictable place. In the immediate aftermath, a community will naturally try to fill the void. Church members sent prayers, friends delivered meals, and sympathetic messages poured in. Yet none of these well-meaning gestures could penetrate the deep psychological trauma of losing a child. The issue was theological. This flowchart illustrates a subconscious worldview held by many believers, known as transactional faith. It is an unspoken contract where devotion is the input and divine protection is the expected output. Jake retreated entirely. He spent every night sitting alone in Ethan's preserved bedroom, surrounded by everyday artifacts: a baseball glove on the shelf, shoes resting by the door, a jacket hanging on the wall. The sheer permanence of that empty room broke him. Looking toward the ceiling, he shouted the ultimate grievance into the void, demanding to know why his son was taken and why he was left behind. The room remained silent. When the desperate human demand for a logical reason goes permanently unanswered, it creates a suffocating spiritual vacuum. Jake's long-held beliefs could not survive in that space. Months passed in that silence. Jake stopped praying entirely. He stopped attending his church, and he abandoned the idea that a caring God was paying attention to his life. To avoid confronting the brutal finality of Ethan's death, Jake engaged in a common coping mechanism known as enshrining. He kept the bedroom exactly as Ethan had left it, using the physical space to pause time and keep reality at bay. But stagnation is fragile. On a rainy afternoon, while Jake was sorting through a pile of ordinary teenage belongings, a dusty, weathered notebook slipped out and disrupted the visual monotony of the room. The catalyst for spiritual reconstruction rarely arrives as a booming voice from the clouds. Most of the time, it emerges quietly from a mundane, overlooked artifact left behind by the people we love. Jake opened the notebook. He scanned past pages of ordinary journal entries detailing high school life, friendships, and teenage dreams, until he reached the final page. It was dated exactly 3 days before the crash. The first lines were a private confession of admiration. Ethan had written, "Dad works so hard. I don't tell him enough, but he's my hero." Then the entry took a prophetic turn. Ethan admitted he carried his own natural anxieties about the future, but he immediately countered that fear by writing down his unshakable trust that Jesus was taking care of him. The following sentence contained a specific directive. Ethan wrote, "If something ever happened to me, I hope Dad remembers God is still good." He concluded the entry with a transcendent promise. He hoped that one day he would see his father again in heaven. Jake stopped breathing. He read the ink on the page in a compulsive loop, reading it again and again. Finally began to shatter. The notebook provided something more durable than a logical explanation for the crash. It offered a tangible reason to begin the slow walk back toward a relationship with God, built on his son's enduring trust. Finding that notebook didn't solve everything overnight. It took years of difficult, intentional reconstruction for Jake to reach a new baseline, where his grief no longer stood in direct opposition to his faith. The idea of a fully healed wound is a fallacy. Temporal milestones still carry immense weight. birthdays remain agonizing to get through, and the empty chair at Christmas is a permanent, visible absence. This illustrates the with paradigm. The human and divine nodes descend into the deep valley of trauma together, moving in parallel. Seeking the steady companionship his son promised, Jake opened his Bible again, finding comfort in God's presence even while reasons remained a mystery. Faith functions as an unbreakable anchor that holds the survivors steady within the storm. It provides the strength to endure the pain rather than a way to bypass it. Today, when people ask Jake how he survived the darkest season of his life, his answer is incredibly brief. He simply states a hard-won truth. He lost his only son, but he did not lose his God. Physical death is an absolute permanence here on earth, but it is countered by the ultimate theological promise of spiritual reunion. When we stop demanding an explanation and instead accept a divine presence, we discover that even the darkest night cannot steal the hope of heaven. And because of that, goodbye is not forever.